All right, welcome back to another edition of the Spread Effect Show. I'm your host, Nathaniel Broughton. We've got the new setup in the new studio here at Spread Effect, and I'm joined today by Michael Fleischner from the East Coast. He is the CEO and founder of Upward SEO and also the author of this book right here. We do have the actual book circulating in the office, SEO Made Simple, currently in its third edition, if I'm correct.
That is correct. Yeah, number three.
All right, well, first of all, thanks for coming on, Michael.
Oh, thank you, Nathaniel. Happy to be on Spread Effect this morning and talking about what I love to talk about, which is search engine optimization and reputation management, really anything else that comes up in conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm with you there. I think we've both been in this game long enough. We could probably just do this off the cuff and have a pretty good talk and pretty productive information for everybody. How long have you been in SEO? Is it like 14 years or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, some people say, was the internet even around 14 years ago? It definitely was. And, SEO, it's funny, the more it changes, the more it stays the same in some regards.
Sure.
So, it's always evolving and changing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, in particular with your book, I know it first came out, 3 or 4 years ago, and it is in the third edition. What sort of things are you updating from, edition to edition? The core concepts are obviously all the same: on-site stuff, off-page optimization. Social media has probably gotten a lot bigger in the time since you first wrote this book. I don't know, what are some of the specifics that, readers can expect in edition 3 versus, what was there before?
Yeah, I think what's really great about the third edition of SEO Made Simple is that in many ways, although we keep the concepts simple, we do get a little more granular and a little more technical, only because Google has gotten a little more granular and technical. So if you want to win at the SEO game, you really need to pay attention to the details. So, I'll give you a great example. In the second edition, we really talked about diversifying your anchor text. And for people who are listening who don't know what the anchor text is, essentially they're the words on someone's website that when you click on those words, they're hot linked to your website, right? So it opens up a new website or URL. Well, it used to be that you could, let's say you were optimizing for paper clips, you could just use the anchor text paper clips, more paper clips, and paper clips out the wazoo. And Google really didn't care about that. They just cared that third-party websites were linking to your own website, and that was good enough. But with the Penguin update that came out, now Google has this idea or concept of a natural linking profile. And essentially what that means is that most sites don't just put anchor text, the same anchor text as every other site. It's varied. Some sites link to you with a URL. They even vary that URL. Some sites will use www.paperclips.com. Others will just use paperclips.com. Some use a combination of branded terms and non-branded terms. So the granularity in which SEO has changed, essentially, in which the Google algorithm cares about, has changed. So we want to make sure that people who are link building, for example, do it the right way, because I know you don't like to waste your time, and neither do I. So if we're going to go through that whole link building process, let's do it in a way that Google is looking for it, and more importantly, is going to give us a lot of credit for it. So generally what we advise and what's included in the book is you want 70% of your links to be the www dot or just rootdomain.com because that's what they consider natural.
Right. Yeah, and I think that percentage has continued to sway more and more towards a higher percentage for the natural, branded or, the www anchor text. It's interesting because it's a concept we've talked about a lot on the young life of this show, and it also comes up a lot, not only just with, introductory discussions about SEO, but at very high levels of SEO. We had, my buddy Cameron from CBS on not that long ago, and this was a topic we discussed. So it's somewhat people running the biggest sites on the internet are are having to address these exact same issues because we're all playing in Google's pond, I guess.
Yeah, and it's difficult too. I mean, running an SEO company, you see the full gamut, right? You see people who you would expect would just have their arms totally around organic search and know what they're doing. And, they're the ones who have been putting their anchor text all over the place the same way for years and years and years. And now you have to undo or change some of that work. And then there are people, who are working for sites that are more established or have more history with SEO that have done a really good job. So, every time a new update comes up, Google algorithm update, some people are going to be impacted and some people aren't. And it really is all based on how you've been doing your SEO up until that point.
Right. Yeah, and it's cool to see you, right off the bat speaking about some of these terms and concepts because you do it very like clearly and in a way that I think a lot of people can understand. That's one thing I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit because you've been in-house marketing directors at big companies. I'm sure
Hmm.
through your consulting work you've worked with both large and small clients, both savvy and newbie type clients, I guess. And then going
Hmm.
out there and speaking and educating and writing a book, your audience is also running the gamut of people who know a lot about it or are just coming into it. What are the similarities between discussing it in-house to your CEO of your 1,000-person company and also maybe talking to a brand new person off the street that wants to make a little money on the side? In some ways, those are kind of the same conversation.
Hmm. Absolutely. And in fact, the way that I write, the way that I speak, the way that we service our clients is really with a concept which is market research of one. And what market research of one means essentially is that you can take anyone, whether they've, like you've been around the block, you know SEO, you know internet marketing, or you could take someone who's really new to the concept. And by using this idea, market research of one, essentially what you want to do is you want to explain things to that person or individual based on their own level of experience.
Hmm.
And, we all have been in a conference room somewhere and someone says, well, when I Google so and so, this is what I see. Now, they may not know that Google, has been updating their search history and customizing results based on their own searches.
Right.
Or maybe they are savvy and they do know those sorts of things. So we always want to make sure that we understand where we're starting from before we start to dive in and explain all these concepts. Because as you and I can have a higher level conversation, if we have someone who's really new to SEO, we can't start there. We have to start with, hey, does everybody understand what search engine optimization is
Hmm.
and what it is not? Recently, I did a presentation for a pretty large group across the US. They had a number of different offices. And even though it was difficult for me to do this, I actually started with a definition of SEO. And I say it's difficult for me to do this because, I've been doing it so long, it's just natural. And obviously, there's certain aspects of it that you understand and take for granted. But these folks were really trying to understand on a page one search result, what can you control? What can't you control? What's paid? There are new elements like product listing ads, right? Those
Right.
didn't exist numerous years ago. So it really is kind of starting, I think, with that baseline of dissecting page one and explaining what you can pay for and what you need to do organically.
Right. Yeah, and I can imagine, what's all going through your head when you're trying to define SEO is, all the nuances that you're aware of. It's kind of hard to take it down into just a few sentences, I think, because as soon as you give one starting point, there's 10 other ways you want to go with that conversation, and you got to slow yourself
Right.
down a little bit. We ran into that when we were teaching a class out here in San Diego, and it's like trying to keep it simple was very hard because there's so many stories from campaigns you've ran or whatever that you come across, and you're like, you want to give those anecdotes, but you'll jump too far ahead, I guess, of your audience.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting too, because I think that's one of the ways that we really evolved into reputation management,
Hmm.
which is now pretty much our mainstay. But as well as I do, 90% of reputation management is really SEO
Right.
and making sure that positive results are coming out on top of negative results. But I think that's really where it started because in the explanation, it's a lot easier to explain SEO through the lens of, well, you see that second listing there, which is a negative review. Wouldn't it be great if that was on page two? Well, how do you do that? And it really kind of begs this conversation of, improving organic results to really control page one or page two, whatever your goals or objectives are. And I think people get that. And I think, when you can put it in contrast to maybe what their competitors are ranking well for,
Hmm.
and looking at tangible results out on the internet, then it becomes real for people.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
as we talk about, we're doing work right now for a large site that is primarily an online catalog.
Hmm.
And one of the concepts that we've been trying to get through to them is just really about how they rank in certain categories and thinking about it in terms of different sections of their shopping cart, or we call those silos in SEO,
Mm-hmm.
right? So until we really broke it down into silo A and showed them how they're ranking, how their competitors are rankings, what sort of products show up in that category, it wasn't until then that they really understood both the power of SEO and also the detriment of SEO if you're not paying attention.
Right.
And I'm sure you've had that too, right? Where you have a lot of clients or people you work with who just don't understand the full scope of SEO, both positive and negative.
Right. Yeah, it's certainly always a battle. I don't know. I try to remember the good ones versus the bad
That's
ones.
one way.
Well, let's talk about reputation management then. If that's something you guys do a lot of, that's certainly something we've had experience in as well over the years doing campaigns for clients.
Mhm.
What's really the goal of a reputation management campaign when you go in with a client? Is it suppressing negative results by publishing proactively positive content and trying to promote it? What are some of the tactics? And also, how do you have those conversations with clients? Not to jump too far ahead, but
Yeah.
reputation management clients are usually pretty tough when they get on the line. They want something and they want something fast and they want that down now. They're emotional usually about what's up there. And that's something you kind of have to
Yeah.
play against and, paint a real reality for what can and can't be done.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's unfortunate in a way, yet fortunate for our business that usually we get the call when it's too late, when the
Mm-hmm.
damage has been done. And as you know, companies, especially from an SEO perspective, if they do a few things correct from day one, they'll never have the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, they don't have an in-house expert, they haven't been working with an SEO, and as a result, they find themselves in these situations where there's a lot of negative content on the web. And in the past, our strategy, when things were different, pre-Penguin updates, and for those who aren't aware, the Penguin update is really the most significant update to come along in a number of years. And actually, they've started talking about the next update, which we can get into later in the show. But with that update, prior to that, we used to just go out. We used to build a bunch of assets, and then we'd get them ranked. And those assets could be anything. It could be images, videos,
Right.
profiles, blogs, and it didn't really take that long. But now Google is really looking for established assets. You need to have some history, you need to have some authority. So you can't just go out and create a bunch of stuff and then all of a sudden find it on page one. It really doesn't work that way anymore. And what we're doing with clients, and you're right, I mean, I'm sure you've had these clients, Nathaniel, where basically they call and they say, okay, you're going to do all this stuff. They sign on, and then a week later they say, why is so and so still ranked number
Mm-hmm.
three and we're not? And they didn't get into this trouble overnight, and they're not going to get out of it overnight. And the conversation we always have is, although you think that's what you want, it really isn't, because it's just like a diet. And if tomorrow you go out and you try to run 20 miles and go on slim fast shakes, you're going to gain it all back, and you're probably going to gain more back, and you're just doing yourself a disservice. And that's really the goal. The goal is the long term. Yes, we want to fix the short term, but we want to change your eating habits. We want to make sure you have an apple a day
Right.
and do a bunch of other things. And if you do that and you follow it consistently over time, not only are you going to clean up the problem, but you're going to protect yourself against other things that are going to crop up. Just because you are successful at removing a negative review today doesn't stop anyone from tomorrow leaving yet another negative review.
Right.
And right, I mean, I'm sure you find this as well, that you really have to balance kind of that short-term need with the long term, which is often the right approach to take.
Yeah, and I like that analogy for the diet. I think that's something people can buy into and kind of see side by side
Right.
how they need to go at it that way. Are you
Yeah.
mentioning the Penguin update? Are you leveraging existing assets more in like a PR fashion then, like going out finding sites, whether it's a guest post or maybe something a little more, I don't know, higher quality than that. I don't know what else to
Mhm.
call it, where you're trying to get more coverage for your client, whether that be positive or neutral, and trying to leverage those on an existing publisher versus building up, like a new WordPress blog.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So you got it right. We're really focused now more on quality press distribution. Also looking at existing assets. You mentioned earlier social and the
Mm-hmm.
role that social is playing in SEO, and that's undeniable. Google has actually come out and said that we're looking at social engagement as a factor in the ranking algorithm.
Hmm.
And that's what we do. So, and many times we have clients who come to us who, they have a Facebook page, but there's one post on it that's 2 years old.
Hmm.
They don't have a Google Plus profile. They don't have things that will naturally rise to the top. And well, the approach that we take is similar in the sense that we try to identify what do they have that can be optimized, what don't they have that we can create and leverage, and then ultimately, how do we make that appealing to search engines? And just creating a social media account isn't enough anymore. You
Right.
have to be active. You have to post a couple times a day. But the good news is there are tools out there that can help companies really manage that process. And I think that's what's been missing in the past.
What are some of the tools that you currently use for your work, and also, I mean, some of the ones that maybe you're alluding to there for clients to use to monitor or to proactively go out there and run an SEO campaign?
Yeah, well, I think, on the social front, I would say Hootsuite is a great
Sure.
tool. It's very affordable. Sprout Social is another one. Larger clients are using Radian 6 and some of the commercial sized tools out there. And I think that, for social, it's really important to manage that proactively and to leverage a tool so you don't pull your hair out. And then the other is really from an SEO perspective, we're still using SEO Moz.
Hmm.
There are a lot of other tools, Rank Tracker, Exist is a new one on the market. There are a lot of tools out there that can give you a lot of different pieces. And that's what's nice about search engine optimization. You can never get enough data. Whether you're looking at Google Webmaster Tools or GA, Google Analytics, they all give you a perspective that is worth taking a look at. And I think that's really the difference between experienced SEOs as opposed to, your small mom and pop who's just learning about SEO. Sometimes they take these things a little too literally, and as a result, they're continually changing and making updates to the site instead of taking in all that data and information, coming to some definitive conclusions, and then putting an action plan together to really start to work on those different aspects that can move the needle from an organic perspective.
Hmm. I mean, what do you tell clients to focus on when you're saying, go in and look at Google Analytics or look at these things? Because I think people maybe sometimes overemphasize rank because it's also kind of hard to chase rank or even track rank these days. And with
Mhm.
personalization and universal search and all those things that have come in the last few years,
Sure.
I'm sometimes pushing that conversation towards traffic, just overall organic traffic,
Mhm.
overall long tail traffic for X set of keywords. I mean, where are you kind of trying to point their eyeballs for the quick log in, see how things are going on the campaign?
Yeah, well, I think you're right on, Nathaniel. I mean, the reality is that because of all these changes, and especially because of universal search, there are a number of different opportunities that companies have to promote themselves and for users to click.
Hmm.
And what we want at the end of the day, it's all about traffic. That's why I want, number one rankings. And, it really ties back to search traffic. And, a great example I always give, I did some work for a foundation a number of years ago. And when I sat down with the guy, he said, well, we don't need SEO. I said, oh, tell me about that. Why don't you think you need it? And he said, because when I Google my foundation's name, I come up first. And I said, okay, well, of the audience who doesn't know you, what do you think they search on? And there's a pause because he realized that that's not how people search, right? We're online to buy stuff, do research. And if you're a company, especially a medium to small size company, in order to compete with the larger companies, you really need to come up for those long tail keyword searches and for those non-branded search terms. So that's really, you're right. We certainly gear our conversations around traffic. We also look at branded terms as well because, as you mentioned, Google Suggest is really important, especially from a branding perspective.
Hmm.
And we want to make sure that our clients are getting traffic not only for their name, but non-branded terms, and it's targeted traffic. And I'm sure you've had that conversation with clients as well, right? Which is, hey, if you want, we can go out and we can buy you traffic. That's still possible.
Right.
But if you want it to be the right traffic, it really takes the research, planning, and ultimately a strategy that pays off.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's always about trying to, you know, um, get them to stop focusing on tomorrow and focus a little bit on how we're going to ramp up towards 6 months, 12 months from now. etc.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to ask you about authorship, actually. You mentioned a little bit about clients, maybe in ORM, not having a Google Plus profile, and then also just across the board for clients. How do you view authorship and having a Google Plus profile, an active one, maybe in the light that, you want an expert and a persona tied to a particular brand or .com, going out there, publishing around the web, or just being that face on the site itself? How are you leveraging it? Where do you think it's going?
Yeah, I think authorship is here to stay. I think it's definitely a key aspect of the Google algorithm. And I think that not a lot of people are using it or know about it. And essentially, what we're talking about here is that if you publish content, you're in essence assigning that to an author. That could be someone from your company, it could be your company. But using the proper tagging on certain article pages or content pages, essentially you're raising your hand to Google and saying, for example, Nathaniel wrote this or Michael wrote this. And over time, I believe that Google is really going to use authorship to provide value similar to PageRank in the sense that it's a credible source. And that's what they're looking for. They want to make sure that when they pull in information, and I'm sure at this point many of your viewers and listeners have already seen for certain search results that Google is pulling in an authoritative listing. It might be content from Wikipedia or some other news source. And they're pulling that information in only because they know it's coming from a valuable source that they can trust. And that's essentially what authorship does. If people are just blogging once a week, I certainly encourage them to, claim their blog on their Google Plus profile, make sure they're using the relative author tag, rel author tag, and do some simple things now that over time will really build and help establish them as an expert in their category or area or niche.
If you have a client that comes in and maybe it's a small e-commerce shop, or maybe it's just a local, well, a realtor or something like that, would you, and they don't currently have a blog, or it's just a small shop with an owner that doesn't have a front-facing profile, a Google Plus profile, do you suggest they create one and get that on the site just for future benefit, I guess? And have you run into any reticence from them being like, well, I don't want to put my name and my face on this in that way in any case?
Yeah, great question, and no, I mean, no one that I've had that conversation with has been reluctant about necessarily creating a blog. I think there's definitely been a lot of dialogue around what to publish on the blog. And I have many clients, we've worked with some clients in the pharmaceutical industry that have to be very careful about what they're publishing and how they say it. Things that are FDA approved or under certain regulations. And in those situations, I think the focus is really on the type of content that can be shared. But I think everyone really sees the value of having a platform that is quick and easy to publish content on. And I don't know if you're finding this, but I think there's definitely a blurry line between blog content and social media, and where one ends and the other begins. And I think that's a good thing in the sense that it just gives you yet another platform to kind of communicate and share your messages.
Sure. And to the point of, what are we going to publish, maybe not necessarily under the lines of what's right and wrong under FDA or HIPAA for a pharmaceutical company, but for just a company that thinks that, nothing exciting happens in their industry every day or every week, what should we talk about? Have you ever gone this route of providing kind of like a white label content service where you're like, we'll write the post for you, or point them in the direction of one of those services? Do you think those services provide value? Do you think clients see those as valuable? How do you view them in the market?
Yeah, I think it's definitely an option. I mean, the challenge you're always going to have, regardless of what industry your client is in, is that the client generally understands that industry better than you could ever, understand it and appreciate it. And as a result, I think that does impact the quality of the content being presented. Where I've seen it work well is where they can find a writer from within the industry to really help them out. Going to these generic services and trying to buy, articles for $20 a piece, I don't feel that that really creates a lot of value, because generally they're not interesting. They require editing anyway. And at that point, I'd rather someone sit down and write a 350 word post, which shouldn't take a long time if you're from the industry, if you're familiar with the industry, even if you just want to share what's currently happening at your company.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've always had a similar outlook on it, and I've never seen it as that much of a hurdle to find someone either in-house, whether it's a
Hmm.
younger person that works at the company or someone that you can bring
Yeah.
in hourly just to write decent content for you. We've always done it that way and maintained
Yeah.
control. But then again, these services that are outsourced, content providers for blogs have hundreds or thousands of clients out there, so I guess there is
Yeah.
a bit of a need.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's interesting now that blogging is really becoming so popular, but I think it's partially because of the limitations that Google has really started to place on some of the other sources where we used to get links.
Right, yeah.
A great example would be article directory sites. I mean, of us, who has not, posted content on article directory sites? It was a great way to get third-party links, and it
Yeah.
was quick, cheap, easy, effective. But now it doesn't work. And what are you going to do? And I think in many ways it's a good thing, especially from a browser's perspective, because now when they find listings, they're going to be more from blogs. They're going to be more relevant to their search query, and they're probably going to be more valuable in the sense that they're from an authoritative source. They're probably vetted. And to your point, it's someone in-house who's taken the time to write something of quality.
Sure, yeah. Hopefully it is quality. We'll
Yeah.
see. So you mentioned, the rumors of an additional Penguin update, going through the community. I actually haven't been keeping up on it myself, but I started seeing some comments about it this morning. What have you read, and what should we expect?
That's a real good question in the sense that not all the information is out, and
Right.
even
I'm
as you
putting you on
know,
the
even when
spot.
it is out, yeah, we'll never really know. But what I've been hearing is that it's about time for another update.
Sure.
People who follow it closely know that Panda was kind of version one, Penguin was really the icing on the cake, and now I think there's actually a third version of it as opposed to significant changes. And
Hmm.
I think the third version is more of the same, but we'll definitely place more of an emphasis on social.
Okay.
Google Plus has been growing. They've got things like an author tag. They are really integrating with local search, and I think that the change is yet another iteration to say that Google is not going to trust a website and what they say about themselves. They're really going to the market, which would be social, and saying, what are other people saying about, and how are they behaving in relation to a particular website?
Hmm.
And this just builds on their fundamental principle of engagement. They're going to be looking at clicks. They're going to be looking at time on page.
Hmm.
They're going to be looking at shares, people sharing things within their circles and even other platforms. And I just think that's really the next iteration. And that's why I know you've been talking about it. We certainly at Upward SEO talk about it all the time, and that is getting on board with social and not just creating those accounts, but getting engaged, getting involved, listening, and really having conversations as opposed to these one-way communications that people often have with social media.
Yeah, and I think that would be a logical progression in the algorithms for sure. I mean, again, making it harder and harder not to do legitimate things and be a legitimate company and have conversations. It was fun while it lasted, but now we all got to do real work, I guess, and
Yeah,
to
yeah,
stay up
I
there. That's
know.
all right though. It's probably better.
It is, and the only unfortunate thing that I feel is that the smaller companies now Google, of course, will come out and say we're Switzerland and we're just trying to find the best quality results for people. But I think it does hurt small businesses in some regard
Yeah.
because they don't have the resources to produce the frequency or quality of content that other people do. That's just the reality, right? If I'm running a landscaping business and I'm the one out there mowing the lawns and at night I'm doing the invoicing and marketing, there's really no way for me to be producing quality content. And I think their answer to that is Google Places.
Hmm.
I think what they're saying is, look, we're making all these algorithm changes and they affect everyone except the small business because their audience lives within 50 miles of where they are. And that's just my opinion of what I've seen with regard to Google algorithm updates and communications from Matt Cutts and everybody else.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's unfortunate in a way because as small businesses and more small businesses are coming on board today, they're not just serving their local area.
Right.
They're serving other places, and unfortunately, they kind of get the short end of the stick when it comes to SEO.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having some of the businesses we've started, I think would qualify as small businesses, and I think that just because of our background, we bake in kind of the cost and the I don't know, the bodies or the minds to do the marketing work, whereas I know other small businesses wouldn't even think of that or wouldn't even have it worked into the way they're going to operate their business to have, 15% of that budget geared towards online marketing. I mean, that would sink the business, or it would never be something they would a way to approach it. And I can get behind the Google Places thing as a bit of a, an end around for those guys that, level the playing field, especially in their local area. I mean, those generally don't take a lot of upkeep. Certainly you
Hmm.
can encourage reviews and things like that, but yeah, it's kind of more for the passive business owner to still generate fair and relevant search traffic, I would say, for
Hmm.
sure.
And is that something that you find? And I ask this rhetorically because certainly, the local customers that we do support, their biggest challenge are negative reviews. And I
Hmm.
don't know if that's something that you're seeing more of, but I definitely feel like that is more and more an issue for our clients who are coming to us and saying, I'm getting all these negative reviews, help me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it certainly is top of mind or top of the conversation with a lot of the smaller guys or even friends I have. And
Hmm.
they're so easy to see when they're fake or crappy too. And it's sometimes it sucks because there's not a great solution all the time either. I mean, it's just kind of a product of the current environment. And sometimes I feel a little handcuffed and be like, well, all right. I mean, we can try to make this better, but I can't make it go away. Again, you get into the reputation management conversation. This isn't
Yeah,
going away
yeah.
tomorrow, but yeah, I feel like it's been there, and yeah, I mean, I heard it again last week, so I guess
Hmm.
I'm with you a little bit.
Yeah, and I think the challenge there too is it kind of goes back to your characterization of really integrating content development as a process.
Hmm.
And that's the one thing that we try to do, especially with small businesses. We try to encourage changes to the process so that when they do have a happy customer who sends them an email, instead of saying, "Hey, thank you for the nice words," they actually send a link back and say, "Hey, I'd appreciate it if you could leave that comment on, our Google Places page or our Yelp page or whatever the case might be." And it's small things like that, Nathaniel, that over time really build up in their favor. But it's something that a lot of people don't do. And changing the process, I think, is just a lot more successful in terms of outcomes than having somebody quote unquote clean it up,
Right,
because again, you can clean it up, but it's going to happen again.
right. Yeah, and maybe that's not necessarily the answer they're looking for, or at least in their mind when they first walk in the door or pick up the phone, but that certainly is probably the long-term solution. And yeah, I mean, we were just down in Cabo last week and had like a tour guide take us out, and I mean, he sent an email asking for a review on TripAdvisor, which I probably wouldn't have done if he wouldn't have asked, but we enjoyed our
Yeah.
experience, and having had that good experience and getting the email, it's not too hard to click over and leave a few nice comments, and that's a legit review.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You got to ask. If you want it, you got to ask.
Right.
That's the reality.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. Well, one thing I like to ask everybody on here, especially you, based on the conversation we've had, what are some of the industry blogs that you keep up with? I mean, you're a published author, so you have to not only through your practice as an SEO consultant and business owner, you stay up to date, but who are some of the people you do follow in our industry, and some of the blogs you do follow because obviously there's a lot of crap that's out there, and I'm always
Hmm.
interested to hear.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm sure there'd be no surprise here. Matt Cutts, obviously from Google, I follow him to get
Uh
the
huh.
latest and greatest. And Rand Fishkin
Sure.
from SEO Moz. He's fantastic. We've collaborated on some studies together and things of that nature. And he's just a great industry guy, great person. They run a great organization over there. So he's somebody that definitely I follow. And of course, I read the industry mags, Search Engine Journal,
Uh
Search
huh.
Engine Watch. And, over time, reading these publications, what's so interesting to me is they never get boring. I mean, they really are on the cutting edge and they're sharing information that maybe you've heard, two or three times, but they take a different approach, a different angle. And that's really what SEO is all about. It's even rep management. I mean, there are
Mm-hmm.
new things coming on the market all the time. And it's just, it doesn't take long. I take 15 minutes in the morning. I kind of scan. I think this is what everybody probably does. But I scan through. I find what's interesting. I spend a few minutes reading and kind of move on with my day. And, I feel informed. I feel like occasionally it will really give me inspiration to either offer something new to our clients or run some experiments or try some different things. And I think that's really important because, a lot of people read, but they don't act or move in the direction of their goals. And with SEO, it is really continually trying new things to see if you can improve. And it's kind of like the internet marketing thing you asked earlier, when on the client side, what is it all about? And it really is having a control and trying to do better than that control. And once you have that, bake it into your system.
Right. Yeah, I mean, certainly those guys, I guess they've everyone kind of fallen to the ground, and Matt Cutts, Rand Fishkin, Danny Sullivan, those guys have been
Yeah.
around since the beginning, and I think really impressed with what SEO Moz has come to do. And even just in speaking, if someone knows anything about the industry and you call those names into the conversation, they've probably also read that, and or you get a little borrowed authority when you're talking about what those guys have said, because I guess they are the savants of the industry, and we all do need to follow them and keep up. And yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Well, anything
And
else,
you know
man?
what? I'm sorry, Nathaniel. I was going to add,
Yeah.
what I think is really great about those guys too is they're continually reinventing themselves.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's really what's important. Even when we talk for people listening who have companies, content development. If you keep pushing out the same content all the time, it's not going to be engaging. It's
Right.
got to be new, different, exciting. You got to give people a reason to click through and to share and to learn. And that I think that's generally a good approach to take. And I get the questions all the time from SEO Made Simple. People find me on any of my numerous websites, and they'll email me and they'll ask me some very basic questions. But I also get some of the more advanced questions where people say, "Hey, I'm thinking of a content development strategy. What approach should I take?" Or "I'm thinking of launching a blog. How do I really create that engagement and get people interested?" And I think those are the questions we need to answer because everything else kind of takes care of itself, right? So this content piece I think is really essential, and I think it's something as a takeaway people really need to think about.
Right, absolutely. I mean, over the last year or two, I mean, SEO has almost even evolved into content marketing as the buzzword, and you hear
Hmm.
the talk more and more and more, and some people might not understand what it means, and they need to probably talk to someone like you. Like, I know I need content, I need to know what the strategy is, I need to know what the publishing schedule needs to be, I need to know who can help me with it. And it sounds like you're one of the best guys in the industry to talk about that. So it was nice having you on the show here. I'm glad we got to talk, and hopefully we can stay in touch from here on.
Absolutely. Nathaniel, thanks so much. Thanks to the Spread Effect. You guys are doing great work, and we'll talk soon.
All right, there's the book again, SEO Made Simple. Michael Fleischner, also the CEO and founder of Upward SEO. Good guy to talk to. Look him up, and we'll link him up on the show here. Thanks, Michael.
Great. Thanks, Nathaniel.
All right, bye bye.